Hello, this is Todd Luck, and after all these years, Dark Horse is finally printing comics with new stories about Tarzan. Well, kind of. This is a review of Tarzan, The New Adventures, written by Roy Thomas with artwork by Thomas Grindberg and Benito Gallego. As I've lamented many times on this channel, Dark Horse put out regular Tarzan comics up until February 2000, and then unfortunately after that all we got was a series of short stories called The Once and Future Tarzan, set in an alternate future where the earth is flooded, that were collected into this one shot. At least the first few chapters were. And then there was cross-company crossovers where he would team up with characters like Gru and Planet of the Apes. These were like once in a blue moon type of mini-series. And that was it for 22 years. They did put out a graphic novel of Jungle Tales of Tarzan, but that's it. 22 years, Tarzan has been mostly absent from comic shop shelves. And so as you'll notice, this is not a comic book format. This is actually reprinting comic strips. Comic strips are, of course, a very closely related medium to comic books. Comic books actually started out as comic strip reprints. And so Tarzan has a very, very long history with comic strips. Daily comic strips of Tarzan started in 1929 with an adaptation of Tarzan of the Apes by Hal Foster, and the comic strip would run for decades with Bern Hogarth and Russ Manning, Gray Morrow, all kinds of great artists lending their talents to the strip. It ran 10,308 strips ending in 1972. And then there were also Sunday strips, which ran for 3,692 strips as far as I can tell, and that ended in 2002. And once those strips ended, the daily and the Sunday went into reprints. And so according to the foreword by Roy Thomas, Thomas Grindberg approached him wanting to revive the Tarzan strip. Thomas Grindberg is, of course, a famous comic book artist, and he needed a writer. And who better than Roy Thomas, best known for his incredible body of work on Conan. And Roy also wrote Marvel's Tarzan back in the late 70s. So he's got a lot of experience in this, perfect choice. And so they approached Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, and in 2012, they started doing new Tarzan strips in the Sunday strip format, but also launched an entire line of strips online. And the strips are still going today. They're available for $22 a year, and it includes several different Tarzan strips along with John Carter, Carson Venus, and a whole slew of other Burroughs' works. Most of them are adaptations, but there are also some like the Tarzan strips that we're talking about today that are new, and they are incredible. Highly, highly recommended. There's already been one reprint of the strips from I Am Barbarian, and we'll be taking a look at how that collection compares to this Tarzan collection. And there's another Tarzan collection that's already been solicited of Roy Thomas's adaptation of Tarzan of the Apes, and we'll be talking about that at the end. And so while Tarzan has been largely absent from my beloved medium of comic books, he has been absolutely killing it in comic strips. And so Sunday strips are slightly different than comic books because each strip is essentially the equivalent of a page in a comic book, but it has to be its own unit of storytelling. It has to have a beginning and kind of an ending and a cliffhanger for the reader to pick up on. And so it's a little bit different, and Roy Thomas does shorter plot lines in here. They're roughly about, I'd say about 50 strips long or so, and so that's like 50 pages in a comic book. So that's a relatively short story. However, the adaptions on EdgarRiceBurroughs.com aren't bound by that, and the comic strip format allows them to do these really long form adaptions, going into way more detail than you would if you only had 5 or 6 issues of a comic to adapt a novel. And we'll talk about that when we get to I Am Barbarian and Tarzan of the Apes. In my opinion, this is not Roy Thomas's best writing or the best Tarzan comics ever produced. This is Roy Thomas really trying to figure out how to tell new Tarzan comics and getting used to the territory And I think by the time he gets to the current plotline in Paladon, everybody in this creative team is just killing it. And the current plotline is amazing. But even rereading these initial strips, I appreciated them a lot more reading them the second time in print. I really appreciated the spirit that these stories were done in, trying to capture that classic Tarzan feel, you know, stories filled with all these different tropes that Burroughs used in the novels, and seeing that on a comic page, right? A printed page that I could turn and just see actual Tarzan comics done like that after all these years was just really, really special. So the covers for these printings of the online strips from Dark Horse are basically just collages with panels from different strips inside. And I think it's quite a clever idea. I think it looks nice. This is all Thomas Grindberg art. And the back features a panel from Benito, and you can kind of see the kind of funky night colors he's got going on. But it's a really nice looking Tarzan. And as you can see on the interior, each strip is a page, and so they're printed nice and big. And so the first plot line involves Law of Opar, and Thomas Grindberg draws it. And as you can see, his art style can be a little sketchy, but he does some really dynamic action. And you can see some Frazetta influence in there. I definitely think Law was kind of inspired by Frazetta's Egyptian queen. The plot line involves Tarzan looking for Jane and Paul Darno, who both get a very active role in the action, which is pretty awesome. And as you can see, Thomas Grindberg does some great jungle work. And he also does great backgrounds for the lost city that they introduce in the story. He also does some great work with the animals. There's a couple pages just devoted to Nekima. And then the second plot line is this odd combination of mad science and leopard men, drawn by Benito, and you'll notice that his colors are quite colorful and bright. But he draws a really great jungle, great Nekima, and you can really see the John Buscema influence in his Tarzan. As you've probably noticed, he does put some funky colors in his night and sunset scenes, but for the finale here at the end, they desaturated that and we get natural skin tones during this battle, and it looks really wonderful. And I just love this scene because this is such a bread and butter scene for a Tarzan story, but it's just been so long since we've had an actual print comic book with something like that in it, and it's just so cool to finally see something like this back in print. And so this hardcover covers the first two plot lines of the strip, and they're currently on the third one, and that is really when Roy Thomas and Benito take their game to the next level. It is amazing. It is Return to Paladon, and you can easily find it if you subscribe to the online strips and just kind of go back a few pages, and you can start at the beginning of that plot line, and it is just amazing, guys. So let's compare the hardcover to the first hardcover collection of Edgar Rice Burroughs strips, I Am a Barbarian. This came out recently, still available, and it is a wonderful hardcover. You can check out my review. So when we compare it to Tarzan, they are the same height, and Tarzan is just slightly shorter as far as the width goes. You're also going to notice that I Am a Barbarian is much thicker than Tarzan, and that is because it reprints the entire adaptation. This is 228 strips, while Tarzan is 98. And so this is $25 for Tarzan, which is a nice, reasonable retail price. I Am a Barbarian, again, because it has 228 strips, reprints the entire adaptation, is going to run you about $70, but it also includes a very nice slipcover. And just in case you're curious, this is what I Am a Barbarian looks like in the slipcase beside of Tarzan. Both Tarzan and I Am a Barbarian have very heavy paper stock that's going to be hard for you to damage, and Tarzan's is glossy, and this is not. This is just kind of regular finished paper. However, that's not a bad thing. I actually really like that for comic strips. Not that there's anything wrong with the glossy. That's kind of become a standard thing with comic book printing. And by the way, I Am a Barbarian is an adaptation of a Edgar Rice Burroughs novel that's historical fiction about a British barbarian who serves as a slave for Caligula. And so the hardcover collection of the strip is a remastering of it with changes made to the lettering and the coloring. And when I did my review, I had some issues with the changes in the coloring, and I assumed that that was part of the printing issues that the publisher had told me about. And in the comments to my review, the artist commented that the changes that I was complaining about were intentional on his part, but regardless, it is a very gorgeous looking adaptation and it is really worth getting. But to contrast that with Tarzan, this is not a remastering of the online strip. This very much appears to be an attempt to print what you saw on the screen. And so there's always going to be a little bit of disconnect between online and print, because when you're looking at something on the monitor, it's backlit and it's usually brighter. And so the colors here are probably going to be a little bit darker in the print version, and the colors may be a little bit different here and there, but other than some minor touch-ups like the desaturation of that blue in that scene at the end, this really is very faithful to what you saw in the comic strip. And so there's one more collection of online strips that is coming, or at least it's been announced so far, and that will be Roy Thomas and Pablo Marquez's work on Tarzan of the Apes. This is a epic masterpiece adaptation of Tarzan of the Apes that will also include Jungle Tales of Tarzan. It tells the story in chronological order, so halfway through Tarzan of the Apes, you get Jungle Tales of Tarzan, because that's where it happens in Tarzan's life. And it is really amazing, guys, and you can go ahead and pre-order that right now. You can pre-order it at your comic shops or on Amazon or someplace like that. And this will actually be the first volume of this adaptation. It's very long. It's actually still going on right now in the online strips. And so, yes, I would recommend this hardcover, especially if you're a fan of Tarzan or Roy Thomas. And definitely look forward to more of the online strips being collected. And that's not the only thing coming for Tarzan in comic book format. Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated is putting out its own comics. The first issue that they produced of Jane is already available on their online store, and they have announced that they are doing a new Tarzan graphic novel called Tarzan and the Jaguar Sun. That's all we know about it right now, but it should have a Kickstarter at some point, and you'll be able to get it that way. And we'll see beyond that, but super excited to see comic books of Tarzan that will be done. And Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated has got some really great people working on their comics, and so I really look forward to seeing what they're going to come up with. All right, guys, like and subscribe for more videos, and until next time, see ya.